Okay, so here we are. We're headed into the home stretch here, and I am just so grateful that we have with us again, Scott. You are just the most gracious person ever um, to be here with us. And Ellen, I don't know if you want to hang on and stay with us for this last rip roaring conversation of the day, but it would be great if you did. Really, we want to just talk about lessons learned, but I also want to turn it in the direction of STEM and project based learning. We talked a little bit about that yesterday, Scott. It's your area of expertise. I know Ellen might say a few things about it as well. But I really want to bring it up because use of time and space when you're in class, not in class, kids have to go on quarantine again, in the science area has many critical points. So I want to start there. Is that okay, Scott?
Yeah, it sure is. How are you doing today, Leilani?
Good. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for being so gracious.
Yeah, no problem. My wife and kids might not agree with that, but that's okay.
Yeah, I understand. So let's start there. What about the newest news in the STEM and science, world since the pandemic, maybe particularly around esports? Can we talk about that first?
Boy, it's funny you should say that because I've taken on a project. We're trying to bring esports to Santa Barbara County here. So that's something that I have been very heavy into, working with multiple organizations to try and get esports moving, working with our local community colleges to try and get those kids working with our high school and middle school kids. And then also working with our university. We've got a group of kids that's an unbelievable group of kids. I had a first meeting with them about a month and a half ago from UC Santa Barbara. And I got to admit, very big misconception about esports is, who those kids are. And thought, okay, let's see, I've got 8 kids coming in here. Let's see if I can get one of them in on time and everything. And oh my gosh, they were the most well-spoken group of kids. There were 2 kids that I would hire in a heartbeat if I needed to. They were all on time. They were all very well-spoken. They all spoke specifically to points about how they used esports to help them get different places in high school and everything. And so that's one of the things that I'm doing right now. And I think a fallacy or a myth about esports, Leilani, is that it's just a bunch of kids playing games. And there's so much more to that and what it does to kids and how, a lot of these kids are not your traditional, I'm not going to say normal, but I'll say traditional athletes and going to be on teams. And they may never experience being on a team, but esports allows them to do that. And the collaboration and the camaraderie and everything amongst them. And you've got some universities now that are spending big money and full ride scholarships to give kids a full scholarship to be on this team. I'm working with Shenandoah University. They're doing a lot around esports. There's a lot of groups now that are starting to create curriculum around esports. So when I go to schools and I try and talk to a middle school administrator or a high school administrator, or even district administrators, and say, hey, you interested in bringing esports? And they say, oh, why do I want my kids playing games? And I've got a whole slew and list of things that says it's much more than just games for kids. And now you've got groups that are trying to create curriculum around it for both the middle school and the high school level. They're building SEL into it. I'm working with a couple of groups that are doing that and building it around the English and math and science, social studies, putting a little bit of the SEL in there as well. So I think esports is an up and coming. They've got an esports conference that UC Irvine, who's probably one of the leaders in it, is putting on in a few weeks. And it's just the more I get into esports, and I am not a gamer, have not played, will not play. But as you know, Leilani, I got very involved in video game design and building curriculum around that. And I'm doing the same thing with esports. So even though I'm not a gamer and don't play that stuff and never have and probably never will, I do realize the import of that for kids that are in school and the relief it may give them and the other things it may do for them to be on an esports team and stuff. So I just think that's a huge component moving forward in our schools. And I think it's going to do nothing but grow at both the middle school and high school level. And there are some that are even trying to take it down to the elementary level. So even though we have to watch screen time for kids with everything that they're doing right now, I think esports can be a huge boost for kids and a lot of benefits for schools and districts.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what we're hearing, and then I would like Ellen to weigh in on this too, is that some schools are using esports, joining the team as you have to keep your grades up in all your other subjects in order to remain on the
Just
team.
like an athletic, no different.
Yeah, huge driver for kids. You're like, oh yeah, I'll pay attention to the other stuff then. Otherwise I can't be on my favorite thing ever. Awesome. Okay, so Ellen, what are your comments on this?
So we've successfully helped one of our school sites implement esports. The challenge that we're having is our network was purchased with E-rate funds. And so our ITS department and our sysadmin, they are very mindful about, what they will allow students to do and not do within that system. One of the things that we're having to do is rewrite board policy, because our current board policy is fairly old. And in there, it removes the online student to student interaction, right? It says students will not interact online. And so we're having to rewrite board policy. The school that has the labs, they have two labs that they funded so far. They're actually our independent studies charter school, and they're leveraging it as a way to re-engage kids. Our charter school has been around now, I think, for about 10 years. And it's typically students that have dropped out of high school, and they're trying to re-engage them and get them to engage not just with, coming and earning credits, but actually re-engage with school completely, and establishing friendships and, supporting that social emotional side of the student. Typically the students in the past, I was the administrator there for 3 years. And what we found is the kids that landed in our independent studies program, many of them had, psychological challenges, and they had a lot of past challenges that really impacted them, where they kind of just wanted to hide in their room or hide in their closet, not go anywhere, not do anything, and not have any engagement with anybody, kind of as a self-preservation. Mm-hmm. And so getting the kids to, okay, you're going to re-enroll, you only have to go to class twice a week, right? Or once a week, they'd kind of ease them back into the learning experience. And so we've successfully built the labs, but now it's getting sysadmin to work with us. And the challenge that we're finding, and Scott, maybe you might not have this challenge or know how to solve it, but oftentimes tech companies will make changes to their technology and how they interact with the networks and things. And it actually creates more barriers for us, because we'll work with our sysadmin team and we'll get it all set up as running. And then, 2 months later, I have the school calling me back because the vendor did something and now it's not working. And again, our sysadmin is not one to say, okay, yeah, we'll just open up all the ports, and in that classroom, the kids can go anywhere and do anything online, So that's probably our biggest challenge right now. But I've been submitting budgets ever since I learned about the new ESSER monies and how it's supposed to be about re-engaging kids into school. I've been submitting my budget for an esports room at every secondary school, and we want to create kind of like leagues within at the elementary, almost like intramurals for the elementary and the middle school kids, and a system where they could kind of earn time in that lab after school if they come to class and do what they're supposed to do. And so, yeah, we've been thinking about.
Ellen, there's so much more to that as well, in terms of, there's some companies out there that I've been talking to that are actually creating esports games around things like financial literacy and things like that. I mean, can you imagine kids? I get so upset because kids they don't learn about the basics of that kind of stuff in school. They don't learn how to balance a checkbook. They don't learn, I could have bought a house. I could have used the equity in this to buy. They don't learn about any of that. What about if somebody had a game and these kids were actually competing? They had to think on the fly and do that kind of stuff. So there's some of these companies out there that really get it. There's also a company, and maybe Leilani can hook me up with your email and I can pass along a company. There's a company that I'm working with, STS. They're in Simi Valley, and they're working both sides of it. They're into the esports very heavy. So they're doing a lot of work with schools in terms of trying to work with them, just like the issues you're having, working with your network and making it so it's applicable to the esports, but then it also doesn't interfere with any of the other stuff. And the nice thing is they're a technology company. They've got people that are there for networking, but then they can also fix it to work around the esports. So that
Right.
might be a good place for you to start and at least talk with them and see. And then they also provide all the stuff. They've got a cool portable esports mobile trailer that they're going to have. And what we're going to do, Ellen, is come January, February, and March, we're going to take that on the road, and we're going to do one in North County for Santa Barbara, one in Mid County, and one in South County. And we're going to be there on a Saturday, and we're going to go ahead and just put it out there so kids can see, parents can see, administrators, teachers can come see what esports is really all about. But then what we're going to do is we're going to cap it off with an event that we're calling almost like a job fair, where we're going to bring people in from the esports world that are all within jobs and careers. So it's kind of a career fair for esports, because we want to show kids and teachers and administrators, look, it's not just video gaming. Look at the careers you can spin off of participating within esports. And we've got 15, 20, 27. We've got females in esports. We've got the whole thing that we're going to try and do. And we're doing those on Saturdays because we want to try and draw that crowd. And it's the kids that probably aren't going to be playing soccer and different sports on the weekends. So we should be okay. But the whole thing is to show them, again, it's more than just video games. It really is. And the one company that I told you about, Ellen, has also got some stuff that they do after kids do the gaming and all that. They have a survey, and the survey is things like, do you feel any aches and pains? Are you okay? Did you eat right today? Do you have constant pain? You know, the things that people are like, oh, you can do without that stuff. And these guys are taking the SEL part of it and the student health part of it seriously, and doing surveys after they compete and after they do practices and things like that, just to make sure they're not sitting in one spot for 5 hours. They can move, they're eating properly, all that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Yes, please, Leilani, share my email,
Yeah.
because I would love to come to these events, and actually maybe we could bring some of the district leadership and they could go and see it to kind of broaden their vision. So that would be
Yeah.
wonderful.
More
I
than
can
welcome
do,
to.
I can do that, no problem. And there's also, I believe Fresno ISD has a whole program. One of the districts that we've worked with a lot, I think it's out in Huntington Beach. And then a couple Northern California have big programs. And there's a guy that's spoken for us before on esports at our national gathering up in Michigan that runs a whole program on how to stand up all the academics. He's with a district, but he has a separate sort of side thing going.
Okay.
Doug, we can pull all those names.
Yeah, if you could send that to me, that'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're hearing about it popping up all over the place. And some people, you know, some of the districts that have these big programs and they're competing on an international scale, they're like, oh, yeah, this one kid graduated high school, didn't even go to college, went straight into $1 million a year job, literally with an e-gaming thing. So that's the kind of thing parents are like, what? Hello? Maybe I could retire, you know? So
well, you look at what ESPN has done, the money that ESPN has spent on this thing. And I mean, it's far surpassed the spelling bee and all the other stuff that people thought, oh, it's just kind of a nice little thing to have. And now they're paying millions of dollars for these contracts to televise all this stuff.
oh yeah, this is a big deal, right?
It's getting
even
bigger
in China and Japan than it is
yes,
here.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, so we're talking an international scale of stuff. You know, these are international brands. That's not small. It's not like a local team, right? It's not even those sports professionals go beyond our basketball leagues, our football leagues, which are typically national, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of permutations to that. So it also goes straight into robotics. So I'll talk about that next. Because I've also listened to in STEM and STEAM programs as, you know, ways to re-engage even when you're at home, robots getting shipped around after they're disinfected or sent to neighborhoods, and the girls holding fashion show robot shows and the boys doing smash 'em bash 'em stuff. I mean, you know, people are getting really creative about this, because this is the other really strongly emerging field, right? Other than just coding, which is also obviously a really important thing. So let's talk about robotics for a second. Scott, go first.
It's huge right now. You've got the CS for All, which is probably one of the biggest things around in terms of that computer science for all in California. With the passing of the content standards and the adoption of all that stuff, I think COVID definitely has slowed it down. We did exactly what you were talking about, Leilani. I implemented a robotics lending program throughout the county here at our county office, and I got probably 15 companies to donate, maybe $200,000 to $300,000 worth of robots that we could lend out. And of course, the thought being that, oh, if they lend them out, they try it, they like it, they're going to contact those companies and they'll buy from those companies and things like that. So those robots were given to us. And what we found, though, was you can't just give robots to somebody and expect them to use it. The first year I did that, and I think out of the 300 and some odd robots we gave out, we were only at like 15% usage. They were coming back to me brand new in the boxes, still wrapped and everything. So then what I implemented was something that not only helped us and the teachers, but it also helped the companies, is we said you could rent whatever you wanted robot-wise, but you weren't going to get them until you had a 30-minute session with the company on how to use it. And it was just them. It wasn't a sales pitch. It was just them showing them how to get started, how to use it. And then we found after doing that, probably almost 90% of them were getting used and coming back. And then they were contacting the companies because they already had that initial contact and things like that. I'm working with schools that, used to be STEM and then it moved to STEAM. And I've talked to a couple of schools, well, how about SCREAM? And we got computer science with the S and R for reading. And so everybody's coming up with all these different acronyms. But I think the most impactful thing I ever saw with robots and coding, and it really did change it, Ellen, I was founding principal for a STEAM elementary school that, we really wanted, and this was 10, 11 years ago before the robots and the coding were a big thing. And I had partnered with a company and they had given us a bunch of robots. And we were a charter school, and the district was not real happy to have us there. And the principal, the admin in the district were not real happy. So the superintendent informed us he was coming around. So I told one of the teachers, I said, here's what I want to do, and I want the kids to do it. You are not to do it. I said, your kids need to program the robot. So as soon as the superintendent opens the door, the robot goes over to the door, greets them, says, hello, Dr. So-and-so, and then leads them to a seat, sits down on the seat as a lesson plan, explaining the robotics and the coding and what we were doing and all that. And for a guy that really didn't want us in his district and tried repeatedly to get us out of that district, he was so blown away that he came back to me almost a week later and said, hey, I would love you to work with our schools in our district to get some of the teachers to be able to do what you did. And it really kind of turned the tide of the relationship with that charter school in that district, because there's 2 or 3 teachers that I still keep in touch with that have really at the elementary level of getting into the coding, the robotics, because the kids absolutely love it. It's so easy to integrate. You could start with Scratch and integrate that through English and math and science and social studies and things like that, and then take the coding a step farther with any of the other robots. And we had some of them with drone races and competitions and things like that. So you talk about wanting to engage your kids at that one school. With the robotics and the coding, it engages kids. And now that they've got robots that can deal with SEL components and things like that, there's just so many directions you can go that there's really no reason, with the passing and the adoption of the standards, there's no reason for every teacher to be doing something with robotics and coding in their classroom, because they've made it so simple with the Blockly and all that.
Yeah. So as you're talking about that, and I want to bring this around now to Ellen, I'm thinking you got stuff to be able to lend like a library. Wouldn't it be great if you did 1 or 2 things at your level, Ellen? You had one teacher pulled in and you lent out your teacher around, or just let the robots go out to the kids and they come up with the lessons.
Yeah, we rolled out our one-to-one program 5 years ago. And after the second year, we rolled out, we're following it with, in the same phases we did one-to-one, we have a CS and Robotics for All program that we've designed. And so we're partnering with Lego Education. We use many of the Lego robotics kits. The first year we were able to have about 30 teachers from our phase 1 schools come and do kind of a train the trainer model.
Oh, good.
where the understanding was that you're going to come and learn how to use these Legos in your teaching and learning, and then you're going to go back. And we didn't say you have to go back and teach your teachers. We said you're just going to be a resource. Ed tech teachers also were part of that TOT. I got to be, a certified Lego trainer.
You get to sing the Lego song now, Yeah.
And so, but we did pull out. So we pulled teachers out by grade levels.
Mm-hmm.
So like all of our K teachers from those 10 schools, well, it was, I think 8 elementary schools from phase 1 came, and we were able to train them on and show them where our team had curated lessons. So they had access to lessons that they could facilitate with their kids. And it was a great collaborative day, all focused around playful learning. That was the big aha moment. My kids have Legos, they play with them all the time, but just understanding kind of the research behind playful learning just was so eye-opening for me. And I was like, okay, I'm buying my son kits for their birthday.
Yeah.
My kids
that's
have
awesome.
crimes, and
But
obviously
you're right.
the pandemic hit us, and so we kind of had to put a pause. But I will say this, a lot of our teachers were like, I have these kids, they're sitting in my room, can I send them home with kids? And the principals let them. And I know our team was really worried because we had already seen after the first year there was about a 20% loss of cubes and things, and we were going to have to think about how do we replace these on an ongoing basis. But our assistant superintendent, she said, let them send them home. I'll give you funding if we need to replace parts, when we come back together. So
ESSER funds to engage kids.
yes, they sent kids home. One of our 6th grade teachers, he led after school club for kids that had kids at home, and they were building together collaboratively. And his wife teaches at the high school, and so they were collaboratively working with high school kids, and the high school kids were helping with elementary kids. And yeah, it was just a great experience. So we're getting back on track. Lego launched a new kit for, I think it's grades K5. And so we're kind of shifting the older kits around. So we're starting to find teachers that are in phase 3 that might be interested in kind of starting to be exposed their kids and expose themselves to the kits. And I will say this though, not having the ability because of lack of subs to pull teachers out for training, we're having to rethink. We thought, okay, we'll pay all the teachers hours after school. We only had 25 of the teachers. There's about 330 teachers that we sent the invite to. Only 25 signed up for the after school, but we're thinking, okay, well, there's our TOTs for
as long as it's 25, you're okay.
Right. And so now we're saying, okay, embedded coaching. How do we go in and teach the teachers with our teachers that are trained, our teacher specialists are all trained. How do we go in and with their kids, like teach the teachers alongside the kids and show the kids and the teachers how to leverage the kits and how to use the coding programs. So it's gonna help us rethink, because I think subs have always been a challenge for us. So if we can solve this with embedded coaching, then it even creates a stronger support system moving forward. So
yeah, it gets more permanent that way.
Can I throw one more thing into the mix, Leilani?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this one you'll appreciate, Ellen. It's actually in your area because I'm working with a group that's going to be opening a dual immersion charter school out in that Chino area and stuff. And there's a company out there, and I want to say it's Garner Holt Education Through Imagination. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Animatronics. That's kind of like the Mr. Lincoln at Disneyland and all this stuff for the animatronics. And how I came across this, I have no idea. The guy got a hold of me and sent me an email and said, hey, we'd be interested in talking with you. And if you haven't seen it, Ellen, you got to check out Fontana High School and what they're doing out at Fontana High School. They've got an animatronics lab, and I'm trying to work with this company now to open something like that, because it's going to be a STEAM dual immersion elementary school that we're going to be opening out in the Chino area. And I would love to get one of these animatronics labs. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars they've spent on it. But you talk about wanting to engage kids. I was an old anatomy and physiology teacher, and I would probably quit this job and go back into the classroom to be able to work with an animatronics lab like they've got at Fontana High School. But it's just the natural progression that you go from robotics at the elementary, middle school and take it to something like that animatronics, where now, I mean, we're supposed to be preparing them for college or career. And stuff like this definitely does do that. And you talk about re-engaging kids. You know, the biggest thing we're seeing right now at the county level is normally we don't have enough money, we can't do this. And now they're coming to us with, oh my God, how are we going to spend all this money by November of next year? I got plenty of ways. If anybody's looking for ways to spend it, I can give you a lot of ways that would spend it and engage these kids.
Million, trillion ways. Okay, so good. So let me make a couple comments in there. Love what you just mentioned about animatronics, because one of the other things that I saw happening when I flew into Orlando for an event we held in Tampa, this is just before the pandemic, we were in a room that was flanking a library, and the kids they were like 10 years old. Some teacher was in there with the kids. They were having to program those little standing robots that look like little people to mimic what you have to do, like if you're running Amazon's robots, right, in the big warehouses, they'd have to find a book, measure the distance in the library that the book was that the robot could go get, and program the robot to go get the book. So we had to watch that. So they were learning logistics, coding, and managing robots at the same time, which was awesome. And then my friend at Robots Lab, the CEO there, he had talked a lot about those things, like the girls using the robots for fashion shows, and these are the standing ones. And then we've done work with, the little Jedi looking round robots and things like that. I've seen that all over the place. We did put in the chat here, James O'Hagan, and Doug can look up his contact information. He's the one with the full program. We'll also look up like Fresno. I think Kurt Madden just left there as their CIO, but they had a huge program there as well. And they're just north of you. And I think there's a few others, like I said, that we could connect you guys up with. So let's move on from robotics. That was awesome, but it has so many permutations. And animatronics is another one. Obviously, also animation itself. There was a shortage a couple years ago in the United States of quality animators. Yeah. And some of Hollywood was having to hire people out of South America. There was a school down in South America where all they did was focus on animation. And so all those kids were being employed by the United States because we weren't doing that in the United States. So I think we need to get our act together and also realize that some of the skills just in the software side are huge, and they intersect with animatronics and some of the other things. All right, so let's move on to drones to finish out our time together. So drones is another area of technology for STEM and STEAM, right? So let's do the usual order here. Scott, what are your thoughts on this?
There's so much. We're in the Central Coast area here, and so you got a lot of farmland that people can't get to and can't do things to. And I know there's a couple of schools that I've worked up in the Santa Ynez Valley, worked with them, and they've got drones doing some of their stuff. They've got it partnered with career technical education. And I think all this stuff with robotics and drones and animatronics, whatever you want to throw in there, I think it's a natural fit for CTE and career tech ed. It's a natural fit for that middle school and high school. There's so much money. I know, Leilani, I worked up at the California Department of Ed for a couple of years, and every year money would get turned back in for Perkins funding because it wouldn't get spent for career tech ed. And there's talk now that they may be taking some of that funding back down, at least in California, down to the elementary level, because upper elementary is an easy match for it, just like you would do in the middle school. And a lot of our schools here in the Central Coast go K-6 at the elementary level. So that means that's going to be in the elementary school anyway for that. So I just think it's huge. And you can do a lot of, a lot of different things with the drones in terms of letting the kids have a little fun with them and let them have racing. And things like that. There's a lot of restrictions that have been placed on them now. And we got a lot of our schools that are doing the drones, and it's right next door to airports and things like that. So they've been forced inside in the gym area and things like that. But the kids still love it. And let's face it, with all this technology, the computer science, the robotics, the coding, the kids are 3.5 steps ahead of us as teachers or administrators anyway. So let them create this stuff. And one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to get kids to work with us to create some curriculum around things like drones and computer science and robotics and the video game design and stuff like that, because the kids know best. They know what's going to engage each other. They know what they want to do. And in a lot of cases, they don't know how to do it, but they'll figure it out.
Oh yeah, they love doing the figure it out. Here, they just like give it to me. You don't even know how to use the remote. Just give it to me, right?
Yep,
So,
exactly.
so Doug and I have been looking at investing in land in Arkansas. And if you shop for land online on Zillow or Realtor.com right now, everybody in real estate knows how to use a drone. I've figured this out, right? I think it's part of the job requirement of a real estate agent in order to be able to use a drone. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Take pictures of land and stuff. So, okay. So Ellen, what are your thoughts on drones and that kind of stuff?
We haven't really, I know that we bought some small ones in our department a couple of years ago when Dr. Wagner was here. And of course our techs are like, I'll play with it. I think we broke it. I think we broke it within the first couple of minutes. I do know that one of our school sites actually does have a couple drones. They are, it's Village Academy High School, and they are an alternative ed school, but their focus is film. And so they have invested in and allowing their students to learn how to leverage the drones, for publishing district things, but also their own bodies of work as they develop their films. So, but we haven't really explored. I think the only other kind of outside of the box tech that we've wanted to bring in but haven't been successful is AR and VR, and seeing how we might be able to leverage those technologies in classrooms, or at least also thinking about like a STEM lab or some sort of kind of lab that could kind of house AR, VR, kind of the 3D printing and things like that, kind of a multi-space lab that teachers can go and take their kids to, kind of like the old, we're going to go to the library today, but more of like a maker space leveraging technology. So we've kind of thrown that idea out there. Not all of our schools have an extra classroom. That would be the only challenge.
Yeah. So
and what else is really, oh, go ahead, Leila.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, what else is really big? I'm working with a couple of companies with too, and it's something that I'd love to get feedback from Ellen and see is, since my time spent at the California Department of Ed, I've always wanted to have a STEM or STEAM certification for California. And I'm working with a couple of companies now. We're looking at doing micro-credentials, digital badging, working with a company, Makers Empire, from out of Australia, that's already got a whole bunch of stuff. And hopefully we'll have it within the next 6 months where students can be certified in STEM or STEAM, so they can use that for a job. They can use it as a portfolio to get into college, community college. We're going to work with community colleges. So those courses that kids take are going to be dual enrollment, concurrent credit, so they can say, okay, I've got college credit in that field. Not only do we want to get kids STEM or STEAM certified, we'd love to get teachers STEM or STEAM certified. And then we want schools, in some place, somebody's got to be brave enough to say, we want our whole district STEM or STEAM certified, and to be able to do that. And in my time spent with the CDE up in Sacramento, they said they would want no part of doing that certification, which doesn't surprise me. But what we're hoping for is we can get an endorsement from them, and they'll take a look at the way it's done. We'll work with one of the universities, whether it be Shenandoah, who we're working with now, maybe a national university, to put that out there. So now it's legitimate, it's credible. Teachers can use that, districts can use it for units over on the salary scale, and things like that. And it's all based around technology. We're planning to use some of the ESSER funds from different schools and districts around that as well. So it's something that I know a lot of people have been asking for, but nobody's really gotten on the move yet to do it.
Yeah, I know that we probably would definitely have teachers that would be very interested. I know when the computer science credential came out, we had quite a few teachers that were willing to go and get credentialed. 2 of our teacher specialists went and completed that credential. And many of the teachers that are teaching computer science at our high schools went and got that credential. So we were even exploring the idea of working with one of the local universities that offers the credential. And if a teacher would be willing to go and get that credential, because we need computer science teachers. We want to transition our current basic tech class that's required for high school graduation to a computer science class. And so we'd like to see, high school or middle school tech teachers, or, I mean, we had a science teacher go and get the computer science credential, and he became the computer science teacher at that school site. So we'd like to see if we could create a reimbursement program where the district would pay them back the money that they paid for the credential if they would go and complete it. So we've explored it, and I know Dr. Wagner had previously talked to HR and the associate soup about doing something like that, but it's just following back up and bringing that back to the table. So I think you would definitely have teachers interested in doing the STEM certifications.
Go ahead, Ellen. I just was wanting to share my screen that the free badging is up and ready now in nostory.com. This is, of course, Learning Council's work. But creating a no cred, anyone can do. You can't give a valid one unless you're an institution. So it can be awarded, or it can be granted by somebody else, awarded, but awarded and valid are only by institutions. So the social level of badging already exists now. This isn't being done anywhere else. So when you create a badge, if you create one that's, see how I can create social and extracurricular? I'm using an identity here where I'm not attached to a school. So I can't create valid, awarded, or granted. Actually, it will be granted because if I give it to somebody else, it's granted. If I create it for myself, it has no moniker on it, right? It's just something I made for myself. But I could give you a social cred, which students can give each other. They can upload their own image. They can give it a backdrop by another own image, and they can grant that to anyone. Or extracurricular now, that's free. But once you get into trying to do an activity above that, that's a grade, degree, certificate, diploma, you have to have it come from a valid institution, which is also free right now. So see how you have different levels: social, extra, grades, certificates, diplomas, degrees, and other no cred. That's all in the site. So this is the first time that credentialing is social, if that makes sense. So that could be done now, or Scott, for what you're trying to work on, that could be done, if there's an accredited institution in the site. So
and it's a lot easier doing it through a community college than it is. I mean, I've worked at multiple universities in the teacher preparation programs, and you talk about trying to turn a huge luxury liner in the water. I mean, that's what it's like trying to get any of that stuff done at the university. So we found that the community college is just a lot easier. And if we can get a dual enrollment concurrent credit, it's just so much easier with students doing it that way than it is any other way.
Yeah, so true. So I'm going to grab and share a different screen here.
Scott, our district's an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, most of them are, if not bigger.
Yes.
It's true. It's hard to turn a big battleship. So I'm just going to thank now my sponsors for the day and come back to you two. I want to thank Class Think and VitalSource for underwriting Learning Council to hold this event, record it for all of our listeners and viewers. And want to make sure I thank you too. Ellen, you're a gem. Scott, you're awesome. I want also to notice, as the final comments of the day, how enthusiastic we all became 10-year-olds as we talked about this, which, if that happens to us at my age, imagine what it's doing for kids. I mean, we really need to think about that, right? So I just want to notice that Scott went into his 10-year-old mode, and so did Ellen, and so did I, as soon as we started talking about esports, robotics, coding, and drones. Like, how cool is that? Okay. Right.
There's absolutely no difference between the adults and the kids when you're talking that kind of content.
Yeah. Is that funny or what? Yeah, but it was obvious. The enthusiasm suddenly went really, really high. So thank you again, Scott, very much.
Yes, no problem.
And Ellen, thank you very much. Okay, so to our listeners and viewers, I want to thank you for joining us. But thanks for being with us for the Southern California Extravaganza Digital Transition Discussion. And that's all for now. This has been your host, Leilani Cawthon. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye for now.